The inmate who walked free without breaking a single rule. The perfect escape. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button, because after this story, you'll start questioning every single rule you thought kept criminals behind bars. The sun had barely risen over Marlow County Correctional Facility when Officer Dana Keene realized something was wrong. The morning head count was routine, almost mechanical, numbers, names, nods. But when she reached cell 42B, the bed was neatly made, sheets folded tight, and the inmate assigned to it, William Hale, was gone. No broken locks. No cut fences. No alarms. Just gone. Within minutes, the warden was notified. Cameras were checked, gates locked, guards questioned. The footage showed Hale being escorted out at exactly 6:42 a.m. by another officer, clipboard in hand. Routine prisoner transfer. Every box checked. The problem was, no transfer had ever been scheduled. Hale, convicted of grand larceny and fraud, had been serving a 12-year sentence. A quiet man with thin spectacles and a permanent half-smile. He wasn't violent, but he was sharp, too sharp. Former accountant turned con artist, known for manipulating small-town banks through loopholes, fake documents, and, too good to be true, investment deals. His victims called him the gentleman swindler. The staff who dealt with him said he was polite, respectful, and oddly observant, always asking about procedure, forms, and clearance levels. It didn't seem suspicious. After all, he was studying for his business ethics degree through a prison education program. Now, he was outside the fence line, vanishing into thin air, and he hadn't broken a single rule doing it. Detective Isaac Mercer from the state's Department of Corrections Investigations was called in. He was an old-school officer, rough voice, frayed coat, and a distaste for clever criminals. As he reviewed the transfer log, his frown deepened. Hale's release paperwork bore every proper signature, every clearance code, every authentication seal. It was flawless. "Who signed this?" Mercer asked. "Officer Barnett," the clerk replied, hesitant. But there was a problem. Officer Barnett had retired 2 months earlier. The system, however, didn't know that. Hale did. Over the next 48 hours, Mercer pieced together a trail that looked more like an administrative illusion than an escape. Hale had spent the last 6 months volunteering in the mailroom, sorting official correspondence, requests, and internal memos. In doing so, he'd memorized the bureaucracy, who approved what, how authorizations moved, and when systems were least monitored. He never hacked anything. Never bribed anyone. He just used information already available, patience and precision. Mercer found that Hale had created a mirror version of an existing transfer form using old carbon paper and official headers from outdated stationery. He then filled in the details for his transfer to county court for testimony, a legitimate reason often used for inmates summoned as witnesses. He submitted it through normal channels, and the system, trusting its own paperwork, processed it without question. When the van came that morning for an unrelated courthouse run, Hale's name appeared on the manifest. Everything was by the book. "Goddamn magician," Mercer muttered as he studied the signed documents. "He walked out using our own rules against us." But something still didn't fit. Hale hadn't contacted family. No one had reported sightings. His bank accounts were frozen. His known associates were under surveillance. Yet, somehow, he had anticipated every move the authorities would make after his disappearance. Then came the first real lead. A week later, a clerk in the Department of Motor Vehicles flagged an anomaly, a driver's license renewal processed under the name Daniel Hain, with identical fingerprints to William Hale's old record, but perfectly legal documentation. Someone had erased Hale from the system, line by line, replacing him with a ghost identity that held a clean background, a valid tax number, and even a credit score. Mercer's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an escape. It was a complete reinvention. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the wall of case files. Hale had always said one thing during interviews that stuck with him: every system's greatest weakness is that it believes in itself. As Mercer whispered those words again, a message popped up on his computer from an unknown sender. It was a single line of text. "You were right, detective. I didn't break a rule, I just rewrote them." And attached, was a recent photograph of Mercer's own ID badge. The timestamp read, 2 hours ago. The shadow identity. Detective Isaac Mercer didn't sleep that night. The message on his computer had turned from a digital taunt into something colder, personal. Someone had been close enough to photograph his ID. Someone inside the system. By dawn, he was sitting in his car outside Marlow County Correctional, steam fogging up the windshield, black coffee untouched. The prison loomed against the morning mist like a fortress made of rust and regret. He'd worked hundreds of escape cases, but none that insulted him like this. This wasn't a breakout. It was a quiet erasure, one that mocked every protocol he'd sworn to uphold. Inside, the warden looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week either. "You realize what this means, right?" he said. "We didn't lose a prisoner. We lost credibility. Every warden in the state's calling for my head." Mercer nodded slowly. "Then let's find the man who stole your reputation before he steals someone else's life." The investigation expanded statewide. Financial records, government forms, surveillance databases, all combed through. Hale's alias, Daniel Hane, wasn't just a fake identity. It was a full life. Tax filings, insurance cards, even a job application filed with a logistics firm in Denver. The digital fingerprints were flawless, the timestamps natural, the supporting data consistent. Hale hadn't hacked the system, he had seeded it. Bit by bit, over months, through Real channels. The first break came when an IT specialist noticed something odd. Each of Hale's new credentials had been processed by clerks who'd since transferred departments. Nothing illegal, just convenient timing. Mercer drove 300 miles to the first one. A quiet woman named Karen Hulsey who'd left the DMV 6 months earlier. She recognized the name immediately. "Oh yeah, Daniel Hane. Polite guy. Came in with a temporary court letter verifying his ID, looked official. He even joked about how bad his mugshot was gonna look." Mercer leaned in. "Did you verify the court letter?" She shook her head. "It was signed by a Judge Claremont." Mercer froze. Judge Claremont had died 2 years ago. By noon, Mercer had what he needed. Hale wasn't just building fake paperwork, he was recycling old identities from the system's own archives. Names of dead officials, inactive codes, and archived signatures, all hidden in plain sight. The system trusted its history. Hale weaponized it. Back at headquarters, Mercer assembled his task force. "He's not hiding from the system," he told them, pacing in front of the whiteboard. "He's hiding inside it. Every record he forges is real because it existed once. All he's doing is reviving ghosts with new data." One agent frowned. "So how do we catch someone who's legally alive under a dead man's paper trail?" Mercer's answer was simple. "We find the mistake he didn't plan for." Days turned into weeks. Then came a call from the Denver logistics firm. The HR manager reported something strange. Hale, under the name Hane, had voluntarily submitted a background check update. Why would a fugitive invite verification? Mercer muttered. Then it hit him. Hale wasn't afraid of being found. He wanted to be seen. That night, Mercer arrived at the firm's downtown office. The receptionist handed him a package that had been delivered that morning, addressed to Detective I. Mercer. No return address. Inside was a thick manila folder. Inside that, a set of clean, signed papers. An employment contract for Daniel Hane. At the bottom was a handwritten note. "You're getting warmer." But something else fell out. An airline boarding pass, issued 2 days earlier. One way. Destination, Lisbon, Portugal. Mercer's pulse quickened. He pulled the passenger manifest. No Daniel Hane listed. But the man in seat 14C had checked in using Mercer's own credentials. The same photo ID that had been attached to Hale's first taunting email. Mercer sat there in the flickering light of the evidence room, the realization crawling through him like ice water. Hale wasn't just stealing freedom. He was taking identities. Each step of the investigation had led Mercer deeper into his own disappearance. And as he stared at the passport photo attached to the flight record, his throat tightened. The face on it wasn't Hale's. It was his. The man who erased himself. By the time Detective Isaac Mercer reached the airport's surveillance control room, it was already too late. The flight to Lisbon had landed 6 hours ago, and the man who boarded under his name had walked right through customs. Smiling, calm, invisible to suspicion. Mercer stared at the paused footage. The man in the video wore his exact uniform, his ID clipped to his chest, even the same weary eyes behind the same pair of glasses. But it wasn't him. It was William Hale. He'd done it. He'd become the detective hunting him. For a moment, Mercer couldn't breathe. The room felt smaller, the hum of the monitors pressing into his skull. Every mistake, every late-night theory, every call to his superiors, it all led to this. Hale hadn't escaped the system. He'd escaped into it. 2 hours later, Mercer sat across from the warden in a conference room filled with tension and disbelief. "So what are you saying?" the warden asked. "He stole your identity?" Mercer's voice was low. "No. He borrowed it. Temporarily." He placed 2 photos side by side, his official badge photo and the Lisbon security still. Even the forensic team couldn't tell which was real. "How?" "By following procedure," Mercer said bitterly. "Same as before. He didn't forge anything. He requested a background clearance using my name through the internal database I've used for years. The system verified it because it matched perfectly. He must have shadowed every login, every code. He knew when I was online, what time reports were filed. He's been watching me since the first message." The warden looked pale. "So he can move, bank, and travel as you. And every law enforcement agency will think you're him." Mercer nodded. "He's made me his alibi." The following week was chaos. Mercer's accounts froze. His badge access was revoked. Colleagues whispered. The Bureau opened an internal review into his conduct, claiming irregularities in evidence handling. Hale had left behind just enough digital crumbs, emails, authorizations, false communications, to make Mercer look complicit in the escape. He wasn't just free. He'd inverted the manhunt. Mercer knew his career was over unless he could catch him. But there was only one person who might know where Hale would go next: Karen Halsey, the former DMV clerk. She had unknowingly helped him once. Maybe she could again. When Mercer arrived at her rural home, the door was already open. Inside, the house was quiet, too quiet. The kettle still steamed on the stove. A faint hum came from a laptop on the table, its screen glowing with an open chat window. The username on the other end read, W.Hale. A single line blinked across the screen. "Did you tell him yet?" Mercer's heart pounded. He typed quickly, "Tell me what?" The reply came instantly. "That I'm done running. But not because you caught me." Before Mercer could respond, another message appeared, this time with a file attachment. He clicked it open. It was a scanned copy of a legal document, one he recognized instantly. A death certificate. Name, William Hale. Date of death, 2 months ago. Cause, heart failure, Marlow County Infirmary. Mercer froze. "Impossible," he whispered. The man had been alive, taunting him, weeks ago. The laptop chimed again. "You still don't get it, do you? William Hale doesn't exist anymore. Neither does Daniel Hain. The system needs a name to believe in, detective. And you gave me yours." Mercer stared at the screen in horror. His own personnel file was open now, his ID photo slowly morphing into Hale's face before fading out entirely. The cursor blinked once more, and a final message appeared. "You can't arrest a ghost. Especially when you're the one who disappeared." Then the screen went black. 3 months later, a man in a clean gray suit checked into a coastal hotel in Portugal. He handed over his passport with a polite smile. "Name?" the clerk asked. The man paused for a moment, then said calmly, "Isaac Mercer." The clerk typed it in, found the record instantly, and smiled. "Ah yes, welcome back, Mr. Mercer. Same sweet as before?" He nodded. "Please." As the elevator doors closed, he adjusted his tie, glanced at his reflection in the mirrored wall, and let a faint smile slip. The man looking back wasn't William Hale. He wasn't anyone. Just a perfectly legal, officially verified citizen, free by every rule ever written. And in a dimly lit database thousands of miles away, the real Detective Mercer's file quietly updated itself. Status, deceased. Date of death, pending verification. They said he didn't break a single rule. Maybe that was the problem. If you think this story was wild, wait until you hear about the prisoner who vanished from death row without ever leaving his cell. Hit subscribe, you'll need both hands for the next one.